If you were to advise someone around leadership here in Asia and in an emerging market, what would be like one or two things that you would probably advise that person?
Hey everybody, my name is Andrew Tran. I'm a marketing branding strategist. I help organizations, their teams, their team leaders deliver and execute on the challenges they're facing, from marketing campaigns to market entry activity, all the way through to strategy and planning. If you want to hit me up, check out my website. It's www.andrewtran.asia. You can find out a little bit more about me. You can book time with me. But until then, let's get on with the show. My next guest is Winnie Lam. She's a seasoned executive, having worked across multiple industries through various leadership roles across 5 countries. She's currently the COO of Colliers International and the General Secretary of the Board for the Hong Kong Business Association in Vietnam. We touched on her career and got straight into it, talking about communication, leadership and development, and we also talked about how that's different between the East and the West. We also talked about her insights when it comes to the emerging markets here and how leadership differs between different nations here in Asia. And finally, we talk about resilience and the actionable steps she takes when it comes to developing resilience and coaching people to overcome the challenges that are ahead of them. So without further ado, give it up for Winnie Lam.
Hi, Winnie.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for coming.
Yes. No, thanks for having me. So for anyone who's watching from home or listening, we are recording at Colliers International's head office in the Deutsche building here in Saigon in District 1. So thank you very much for allowing me to come in, set up, and have a chat with you as well.
Pleasure.
First and foremost, how's everything going?
You mean in time of COVID?
In time for COVID.
All right. I think we are actually quite normal.
Okay.
For reason unknown, I think we have been quite steady. We haven't been really experiencing a dip.
Okay.
Per se. Yes, definitely with lesser client being able to visit, things are not as hectic, I would say. But I think everyone is being creative and are looking for ways for things to keep on happening.
Nice.
We were lucky that we were kept very busy. Okay, money may not be happening yet in some cases because we really can't close deals in some instances until the clients are able to make it here. But nonetheless, we're making progress.
Okay. Okay. Great. Well, it's moving. It's moving positive.
It's moving. We are positive.
Yep. Exactly. So, so for anyone who's watching or listening, today's theme is about leadership. And specifically around leadership, resilience, and really Asia in general. And
Okay.
I really like doing some research on you. I really love like your background and kind of where you're from. So for those who skipped the intro part, went straight to this straight away. Like really quickly, like you've worked around 5 countries, roughly about 5 countries. Yeah, around Canada. China, Thailand, Hong Kong. You're from Hong Kong.
Yes.
And now you're based in here in Vietnam.
Yes.
So kind of like really quickly, like how did Vietnam kind of eventuate?
Well, Vietnam first of all happened by accident.
Okay.
I didn't really pick Vietnam. Vietnam kind of picked me.
Okay.
So I started here back in 2004, 2005. Really, Vietnam doesn't really register on my map before I got here.
Right.
So it was very new. First arrived, I find that it was very like old time China. All right. But other than that, I think Vietnam is Vietnam. And I think it grew on me. I think for the first few years was very frustrating. Because you don't know what you're getting yourself into. And then you stare at the reality then. After a few years, I was desperately wanting out.
Why was that?
The main reason, to be honest, is I was finding myself almost full-time managing down and there was a very little peer stimulation, or I believe learning starts from being around people that knows more than you.
Right.
All right. And at that time in Vietnam, it was like I'm the know-it-all a lot of times in doing my work.
Okay.
Of course, I met a lot of smart people outside of work, but there's just not enough stimulation within my job at that level that makes me feel that I need some learning.
Okay.
So I wanted to leave. It still takes me 2 years from the point that I think I had enough.
Yep.
For the company. The company actually sent me to China as a result, because I basically said that it's like, get me out of here or I'm out of here.
Right.
And the company got me out of here.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, but you came back. You came
I
back?
came back. Now, this is different. Coming back was a very conscious decision. Okay. I think when you were out, you gain new perspective, and it's definitely in my case. A lot of the frustration I had, I end up realizing that it is because of a lack of proper comparison.
Okay.
Right? I used to think that Vietnamese staff are very hard to manage. Okay, for various reasons. All right. But as I moved to China, and I moved to Hong Kong again, and with a role in the region, I realized that a lot of what I seen as problems before were not Vietnam specific. It was more generation specific. So at my level, I'm working with managers from many different countries, and Gen Y, Gen X, Gen Z, okay, all of that. And honestly, it provides new perspective.
Okay.
And I realized that, you know what, I actually had it pretty good in Vietnam. I didn't plan to come back either,
Okay.
even though it was an easy choice.
So you saw the opportunity really to come back?
No, not that either.
Oh, okay.
I was very going with the flow. All right. I left a corporate position because they were suggesting me to go to even more developing countries, which I think the opportunity could be for some other people.
Right.
I basically resigned and has decided that I may go on my own for some consulting for a little bit. Haven't decided on location and everything.
Sure.
And Vietnam came calling.
Okay.
All right. So I did about 6 months of 2 weeks in, 2 weeks out. I actually, before I made the decision to move back here full time.
And the rest, they say, is history.
The rest is history.
Yeah. So jumping along, like leadership, I want to talk about leadership because you've had leadership roles across different countries and different regions, both emerging and in a mature kind of state as well. In your opinion, like, what does leadership mean to you?
I never give it a lot of thoughts. I think leadership, first of all, is leading by example. I would always tell my team, there's anything that I assigned to you, I'll be willing to do it myself.
Okay.
Right. So it's about rolling up your sleeve, get your hands dirty when it's needed, especially in a developing country.
Yeah.
I look at it as a once in a lifetime opportunity to be able to go into a different country when you don't know anything about the country really, and be able to do what I'm doing, for example. All right. I know I am pretty good at what I'm doing, but Vietnam provided opportunity for me to even try hands on things that I previously haven't done before. So I really think it's about the willingness to do the work. Leadership is not up here.
Right.
Leadership is in the doing, definitely.
Okay. So how do you divorce or differentiate a leader versus like leadership versus management?
Manager is more into the operation, day to day. Things have to happen, the deliverables. Leadership is more in motivation, giving people a value, giving people a direction. People need to understand why they are doing what they are doing. They have to see the value in what they are doing before they will give you their heart, right? We're human beings. Human beings are selfish to start with, okay? I want to look at what is doing it for me. And that is often the questions that we need to answer, actually. It cannot be, there's something for the business, there's nothing for the individual. Who wants to do that? There really is going to be something that is two-way, all right? So we need to find value in everything that they're doing. I used to do KPIs training with some of our clients, and they will say that they find it very difficult, especially when they are trying to set KPIs for more junior positions. For example, a receptionist or a driver. How do you set KPIs for these people to motivate them and to tell them that they are just as important as everybody else in your organization? I actually don't find it that difficult because every position serves a purpose. What is that purpose to the organization? It's like, without that, what will happen? All right. Without a driver that is always on time, get you to places so that business can happen. All right. That is actually a pretty big contribution if you know how to articulate that. All right. Your driver will probably just come and say, I come every day, I get you to places, and I'm on time. But to him, it's his responsibility. But he may not know his impact on the business. Because if you just add a little bit of like, well, you get me to places on time. That's how business get to happen.
Yep.
Then it's a very different motivation for some. All right. I can't expect everybody to be at that level and thinking that I need to be doing good for the country, for the company, and whatnot. But that doesn't mean that we should not try to impart that value.
I like how you said you're showing people, like showing what they do, but how it impacts to the wider kind of organization as a whole. Like something as simple as being a receptionist outside or a driver, showing that, hey, you know, your contribution to this organization will help us do X, Y, and Z.
Yes.
You know, and I think that's something that a lot of, like, even for startup leaders, where they're wearing multiple hats, showing that kind of ability to you know, the vision and painting that kind of vision to anyone to be able to say, hey, what you do makes an impact to everything that's happening around this organization.
Yes, you sometimes you really need to help, right? It's that they obviously they're having a more junior job because they haven't accumulated the experience, or they may not have a very sophisticated background.
Sure.
But that doesn't mean that they don't understand direction or they don't understand value. You know, so I think a lot of time is that don't make the assumption too early that, well, they would not know. Look, have you tried? Have you told them? I think that's fundamental in trying to build an organization that you are pushing a certain culture. You will have to be very consistent, disregarding who you are dealing with, at what level you are dealing with, because people are not stupid.
Right.
I would say it doesn't matter what level of work that they are doing, and consistency is extremely important in imparting this kind of message.
I like how you kind of said as well that everyone is intelligent, right? You don't hire people because they're stupid. Like you hire them because they've got an ability and they've got an awareness and intelligence that you know, like for that specific role, and you see potential growth. Like as I think as a leader, as a manager, you want to hire a team that enables you to execute or deliver on the things that your vision, which you kind of said.
Empowerment is very important. If you don't empower people to make decisions, there's no way for you to know that whether they can or they cannot. All right. Asians in particular, I'm not saying Vietnam, but Asians in particular, are a little bit more reserved in terms of stepping up to the plate and owning it. It's just because of the way that we were educated. We were a little bit more protected. We were told a lot of times instead of encouraging the exploration on our own. Now, times are changing for sure.
Yep.
All right, and Vietnam is a country that hasn't opened for many years. And the generation that we are working with right now, they're also fairly heavily influenced by the parents who were wartime parents. They had a very different life. So a lot of the things that we are encouraging right now for them may not be the norm back then. So in Vietnam particularly, I felt that it is absolutely necessary to show them what it is in the rest of the world, because Vietnam is part of the world.
Yeah.
And I accepted the fact that the common sense of mine, a little bit different than them, is because we don't come from the same background.
Yep.
So
showing empathy, really.
yes, you have
and
to.
Understanding.
You can't go to a place and imply your standard and without understanding what you're dealing with, right? And then this way it will be forced. There will be a lot of misunderstandings, and you'll be very frustrated. Because why don't you understand what I'm doing or understand what I'm saying, which I consider common sense?
Yeah.
Well, if you and I are not on the same page, it's not common anymore.
Right.
So common sense out the window. So let's try to find common place before anything can happen.
Yep. Yeah, actually that will touch on a point that I want to kind of explore, but because you've had, so for anyone who's kind of watching, listening, you're the COO of Colliers International for Vietnam. So you know you hold a very high-powered role, a very influential role in the company as well, and you've also held quite influential roles around the world as well through the countries that you worked with. Do you find from a leadership point of view, are there common traits that transcends language and culture?
I
understand that like empathy would be one thing. Like as leaders, whether or not you're from America or from Asia, I think showing that EQ, the emotional intelligence to be able to kind of say, hey, I'm a visitor. I'm not from this particular country. So there are different norms and cultures that I need to adjust. So I think adjustment and empathy is really I find it's a very common kind of thing. Do you also find that also being being a visionary is quite a fundamental trait? Being a good storyteller is a fundamental trait?
I think it's the ability to relate, actually. You have to be willing to look at things from their standpoint. All right. For me, it is important that I think I am being pretty consistent with what I preach. Okay, I think this is an important thing, because anybody can point a finger and say you're a hypocrite. You don't do what you talk about. All right. I think it's the willingness to step into their shoes and see it. But at the same time, as I said, Vietnam is part of the world. Don't make it such a big deal that it has to be different. All right. I think having been in Vietnam for this many years, it's a very interesting phrase among a lot of the expats. And then when we were airing our frustration to each other, very often someone would say, hey, TIV. What's TIV? This is Vietnam. All right. So, and it's easy to brush it off that it is just Vietnam. I would have staff telling me something when I was just telling them that something can be done a different way, or is there any way of doing it other than what we are facing it right now? They would tell me also that, well, we are in Vietnam, we do it this way. No, I refuse to accept that. All right. Well, let's put on your thinking hat. Disregarding where you are, this is the issue in front of you. All right. What can we do? I think it's really about pushing that envelope.
Right.
All right. And there is a reason why I am here as an expat and be able to do certain things that they can't hire a local to do. It's because I have had the opportunity to be exposed to some of these things, and now it's my time to try to make it happen here. So if I consistently giving in to language or giving in to this is Vietnam, then I'm not delivering what I'm supposed to deliver. All right, it definitely takes a little bit of determination, all right, and going down the difficult road at times. But once you embark on that road, you will find people that are willing to make those steps. I won't even call it changes, all right? Because it's not about changes. They actually don't know one thing from the other.
Right.
They're just being exposed to one way of doing it. But if you take everything, the country, out of context, actually, there could be many ways of killing a cat.
Yes.
And you just have to find willing participants for that. I don't try to convert everyone, okay? I would be silly to try that, but I will constantly hire people who value that and want that.
Yeah, it's that flexibility, right?
Yes, and then you do bigger things because of that, right? And so it would have been the same if I'm working in Hong Kong, Canada, wherever. It does not matter because you have to be willing to take the situation out of the context of the country.
Yep.
So if we're going to do it, doesn't matter where you are, how are we going to do it, first of all?
Yep.
And then you put it into the environment. See, okay, so what is possible, not possible, why not?
Yep.
All right? So I need people to be willing to be solution-based to start with. It's okay. There's no right or wrong answer here. But is there a better answer? Is what we're going to drive for.
Yeah. I like how it's about empowerment, it's about flexibility. It's about being, it's like as a leader, it's having the vision to kind of see the potential of one person and then as a leader, perhaps helping them facilitate that, like growing that kind of.
Yes, I think my staff will say that. I think many a times my staff would think that I'm completely crazy, to be suggesting that there are other ways or need to do it differently, and I think it's a learning curve. I dug my heel in, and at some point of time, then they will start to understand that there really may be a different way, and it doesn't have to be different or otherwise simply because we're in Vietnam.
Yeah, and I like how what you're talking about as a leader, you're also being a coach as well, and that's something that you kind of do on the side as well, like besides being COO of Colliers International, like you run your own consultancy kind of firm and you coach certain businesses and certain leaders within those businesses. Do you find like is there any like different styles of how you coach various individuals?
Now, actually, that's a very tall order.
Yeah.
All right. And because I'm running an organization, I need to be responsible to the organization.
Correct.
In terms of how I use my time. So I wouldn't be saying that I spend a lot of time of customizing my coaching to different people. I would rather say that I would always tell the staff is like, no matter what I'm showing them and whatnot, don't take it, regurgitate it, all right? And what I need you to do is like, pick and choose what works for you and start from there.
Yeah.
Because if we believe leaders come in all shapes, sizes, and styles, they have to be comfortable with how they are doing what they are doing, all right? So I would not be insisting that things needed to be done a certain way or whatnot. I would consistently say that take what you think will work for you and try that on for size.
Yep.
Right? Because that's pretty much all that you can ask for. And to be honest, like, who has the time to coach every single person along their everyday doing? So And a lot of times my direct exposure will be more my managers and directors, and I need them to learn to cascade.
Yep.
And when I impart something to someone and then they build it into their own and then they cascade it down, probably will be a little bit different too.
Yep.
But as long as this cycle continues, I think we can't be too specific about what is it that each one of them are taking away. As long as there's some takeaway and they keep this going.
I like how you said, because at the start you were like, hey, we have to kind of show people a vision of what we want to try and do as a leader. And then you talked about the differences between a leader and a manager. And I just liked how you just explained, like, hey, as a leader, my job isn't to prescribe exactly what needs to be done. Because otherwise I'm doing your job, and it's
Exactly.
why did I hire you in the first place if I have to do that?
Well, we actually, especially here, I was lucky to have a very supportive CEO and the owner of the company that I could actually spend the time to tell people why they're hired, and then what is the expectation, and then do the occasional training and coaching in terms of how they can grow. And it is important to articulate it. Don't take it for granted. Don't think that, of course, like, they will know. I'm trying to give them something to do good. I am the most long-winded person in the company in terms of telling them why.
Right.
All right? Because until people understand the underlying reason of doing certain things, they would just do it as they understood it to be. Until you instill maybe a slightly different understanding or widening the understanding. Because that's the bottom line is you have to really understand how human beings respond to these things, right? We form our opinion simply because we have so and so experience in life, right? So if you want them to have a different opinion or different value, you have to change that and reach that, or stretch that, whatever that may be, in order for people to be receptive. Right? Otherwise, it's like stuffing Peking duck.
Yeah.
And it's no fun.
Yeah. I also like that as leaders. So for anyone who's kind of watching or listening, like, I think there's a common thread when it comes to leadership, right? It's experience, but it's not necessarily the length of time you've been in one role. It's more about the learnings that you've embarked on, whether or not they've been positive or negative, but they're learnings at the end of the day. And I think you kind of translate that, because I feel like the experiences that you've been able to build through the years has enabled you now to kind of say, hey, through my time, like, moving along the management ladder, yes, I was a facilitator as a manager, and now that I'm in a more of a leadership senior role, I understand time is very valuable for me, and that now I have to trust my staff a little bit more.
If the buck stops at me every time, then this organization is not going much farther, right? And it involves some risk taking, all right? When I was in a leadership role still, but maybe in a much bigger organization, I still have a lot of people that I reports to. I always said there's like, please don't let my boss find out how I manage, because he will probably pee his pants because of the risk that seemingly I am taking with what accountability that I give my managers and allow them to make certain decisions. I think it's an appetite that you have to build. All right.
Do you think that's something that is off your experience when you were in Canada? Because I find the accountability is something that I'm really accustomed to, like, growing up in Australia, working in corporate offices in Australia, working with a lot of businesses across the world from a westernized kind of point of view. Do you find that giving accountability to someone and trusting that accountability is something that is quite new or different?
In Vietnam, I would say when I first arrived here, it's very apparent. All right, no one wants to make a decision. Everything is like deferred to the next level up. All right, but having evolved for the last 10-15 years, I think it's getting better. All right, and it's also about like, how do you give people responsibility? Now, a lot of people are afraid of responsibility for the first time. It's is mostly because of the fear of failure.
Right.
Right. So I would like to tell people that I want to make this a safe place to fail. All right. And it's not that big a deal as long as you're not a renegade.
Yeah.
Meaning that you actually have thought about it. You've actually decided that this is the course that you are going to take.
So it's method.
Somehow you fail.
Yep.
Well, because the decision was flawed, maybe it's because of a lack of experience. But I think first of all is that you got to make sure that you as the person ultimately responsible for, learn how not to freak out first.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that is probably not the easiest thing to have, because like if anytime you heard something happen which is an obvious mistake because I let you make a decision, I freaked out, no one will ever make a decision
Right.
again, right? So the biggest challenge for me is to step back, take a deep breath, and let's focus on solving the problem first.
Right.
Direct everybody's attention in let's fix this.
Yeah.
We can fix this. And even if we cannot fix it, all right, there is still a fix.
Yep.
In the end. So it's not a perfect fix, but you still need to probably apologize, report to people,
Right.
look at what's the damage and so on and so on. So focus the energy on the aftermath. And then we could revisit the situation.
So kind of like look
again.
inwards to kind of see what you could have done better, what could have been done
Yes,
better.
definitely.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, don't think I don't freak out. Okay,
Yeah.
I just probably freak out privately.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't bring any value if you behave like that in front of these people who are newly getting the responsibility.
Yep.
And in terms of doing what it is. And of course, as the person giving them the responsibility, I have a much better idea whether it can be fixed.
Sure.
What's the impact? All right. So I may not be immediately telling them it's okay, don't worry about it. All right. I probably won't go down that road because then they may not feel the real impact of the situation. But then if you could go to a solution mode right away, let's just deal with it. Okay. Let's get everybody that is involved, sit down, let's look at what else can we do at this point.
Yeah.
All right. What can we do is like by pointing out the stakeholders. It's like, okay, so who are the impacted parties here? So with each of the parties, what do we have to do? And then once we figure it out, we settled, especially external stakeholders, then we'll sit down and look at the issue.
Yeah, I like just wrapping up to that point. It comes back down to like going through the right steps to identify what the problem is. If you can identify what the problem is, then the solution is a lot more targeted, it's a lot more focused, it's a bit more, and it's a lot more easier for the surrounding teams in order to kind of come together and ideate.
We always said that the best way to learn is through mistakes, okay? Yes. But there is a price to pay, obviously. I think it is important as a leader that you know that that's a given. All right. I would tell the most junior, well, even the managers, is like making mistake is expected. So if you have not made any mistake in the 6 months that you're working here, I'm going to start looking, are you hiding anything? Because I really need the culture of that. It's like speak up so that we can help when it still can be helped. All right. Because if you sweep it under the rug, we don't know how far these things could go. And I need them to be brave. If they can embrace the fact that mistakes are really going to happen and it's expected, and hopefully they'll be more willing to speak up about it. Now this is just hope, right? Because you don't know if they are comfortable with that. But I will continue to tell them that this is probably the best place to fail. And then hopefully they won't hide anything, and we keep on telling the managers that the cascade the same belief down the line, all right, so that they will bring the problems to you at the right time, so that we can actually be able to help. I have to be the first one to confess that I still freaked out from time to time. I probably need to do better, but I'm also human. So I can forgive myself for that.
Yeah, I like, just in summing up, I really like how you just went, hey, it's about creating the right culture to enable those around you to do the best that they can, to learn from, you know, the experiences that they will receive from it.
Learning is their job. Teaching is not mine. I would tell every single staff of mine. All right, my door is open. You can knock on it, but my name is also not Google.
I like. I mean, this is a really interesting kind of chat coming from yourself, like, because the people I normally speak to from a CEO perspective, like, it's a very common theme right now, which is about empathy, about like getting in touch with oneself, but you've kind of prescribed it a little bit better in the sense that, hey, this is my role as I need to help define like what the vision is, but my job isn't necessarily to make you walk all the way through, because I hired you because I believe in your skills and your ability. Yes, we're going to make mistakes along the way, but we're going to learn from those mistakes, and we're going to adjust, and we're going to keep pushing forward. And I think that's with life in general, coming through, and I think that's with anyone that's ever had to play sport and had to get better at a particular skill. Like, that is something that I kind of see as well. So look, like, in wrapping up, Winnie, like, quick words, like, if you were to advise someone around leadership here in Asia and in an emerging market, what would be like one or two things that you would probably advise that person?
So we're talking about first-time leader. I would say be very willing to own the mistakes of your team. All right. Because once you have segregation, then the team is not with you. So the reason why I'm telling them, I'm hoping that they won't make the mistakes, because they need to know your mistake is mine. All right. And if you're not willing to own the team mistake, you shouldn't be there in that position. Okay. Because like you need to know that as a leader, how you behave on an hourly basis, I would say, is actually swing the emotions of the office. All right. When you are in a bad mood, or you are displaying certain negative energy, the team absorb all of it. All right. And then they will not be as willing to share. They will not be as willing to tell you what is going on. And then it doesn't make for a very effective organization. And the most important thing on top of that is that understanding leadership is really different than managing. So there will be time that you really need to manage, then stick to the facts. All right. And then when you are leading, you probably need to use more of the empathy. I don't think any of my staff will set that working for me is easy. I set the bar very high. I probably set the bar so high that they need to reach and stretch, and the bar will continue to go up as they do that. But I want it to be their goal. And otherwise, don't come and talk about promotion, salary increase. Because it's all about justifying your worth and what you're giving. So I think those are the things that I would tell first time leaders, and still a pretty tall order.
Nice. Well, thank you very much for your time, Winnie. For anyone who wants to kind of get in touch with you, I think LinkedIn is probably the best one. LinkedIn. So I'll put all the show notes. I'll put all the notes in the show notes below, and in like everything else like in YouTube. But thank you very much, Winnie, for your time and telling us about what leadership is from your perspective. So for anyone at home, thank you very much for listening and watching, and I'll see you on the next video.